This video is going to cover post-installation configuration. So we installed our two servers, and now we have a little bit of work to do with them to configure them properly to be on either a lab network or a production network. In our case, it's going to be a lab environment, but on a real production type of network, you'd want to go through these same steps. Right now, I'm in the class shell, and I'm under the post-install config material section. The first link that I have here is Microsoft Learn. This takes you out to perform post-installation configurations of Windows Server. This here gives some of the different steps and different things that you can do after you have installed Server. So this will be kind of your reading for this section. So you can see it gets into the available tools, how to configure server core using sconfig, what desired state configuration is. Desired state configuration. How to use Windows Admin Center, and then using answer files. And then there's a quick knowledge check and a summary there for you. So I ask that you guys please read this section. It's pretty quick, and there's not much to it. Before I go further, I'll just mention some of the things that you do want to configure on your machine, and I'll be doing that here on my VMs in just a minute. Usually you want to give your server a name. Your name should be something descriptive, or it could be something that is also obfuscated. So you might not want to use like domain controller for the server name, because that's not very secure. However, if you believe you have good defenses in place, a good perimeter network, those sorts of things happening on your network, you could probably get away with it, but it's not best practice. In a lab environment like ours, I am going to use obvious names like domain controller and client and things like that, just because we're in a learning environment. But remember, in a production environment, it's not best practice. Do you need to add your server to a work group or to a domain? Do you need to install Active Directory? We will actually install Active Directory later, so we're not going to worry about that. What type of network settings? Are you going to change IP addresses? Servers should have static IP addresses. We typically don't want to leave those to DHCP dynamic types of addresses. In our lab environment, we are going to switch to a static address after we update the servers, because as soon as we switch our servers to a static IP, they're no longer going to have internet access, which usually will be just fine. Time zone you want to change, language settings, add any roles or features. We will do that here later on. Turning on the Windows Defender firewall, which should be on by default. We may need to allow exceptions for that, and then also to activate your server. So I will do that here in just a minute. Just wanted to show you that reading. Also, in our post-install config material section, there is just a web link that I found out on Google, and it goes through a lot of the different things I had just mentioned, but with screenshots and how to do these tasks kind of step by step. So for example, how to configure a static IP address, you can click on here, and this will show you. Here's showing you inside of PowerShell. Here's showing you inside of the GUI. So just a good resource. I thought I would add it. And then also you will see a video link here, which obviously I'm recording right now. So eventually there'll be a video link for you. In terms of our assignment, there will be a post-install configuration assignment here that will list all of the different things that I would like you to configure on your server. So I'm going to flip over to my VMs right now. I have both my Windows Server GUI or desktop version and core. I'm just going to start with core here real quick. Alright, so when you come to Windows Server Core, what comes up here is what's called the sconfig. It's kind of a text-based menu option which will allow you to configure your server. So right here, we're part of a work group. Eventually we're going to change this to a domain. so don't worry about that right now. But for example, if I wanted to change the domain, I would type option 1 or hit number 1 and enter. And it kind of goes into, like I said, a text-based menu here, a wizard. And so if I wanted to do a domain join, I could hit D and enter, and that's going to ask me the next name. So I'm going to just cancel this because I left it blank. But I do want to change the computer name. So I'm going to change this to server core. Go ahead and change the name. It says, do you want to restart take effect? I don't want to restart right now. So I will just go on here to the next menu. Network settings. Actually, before I do network settings, I'm going to go to the update settings. Update settings I want to set to automatic, because I want those updates to come automatic. And I'm going to go into step 6 and I'm going to install all updates. So I'll let it do that. While that is working, I'll flip back over to my GUI or my desktop version. And usually where I do a lot of administration, maybe because I'm a little old school, is in the server manager. So I'll go ahead and open that up. So when you open up the server manager, and actually the server manager opens up by default when you boot into Windows Server, you'll start to get this message about trying the new Windows Admin Center. So I'm going to close that out for right now, and I'll go into the Admin Center in a little bit. In the server manager, this kind of gives you a one-stop shop to do a variety of things with the server. Under the tools, you would see all of your available tools for this system, and as you add roles, you would have specific tools for those roles. So for example, when we install what's called Active Directory, you would see an Active Directory users and computers, Active Directory sites and services, and various other tools here. When we install DNS and DHCP roles, you would see DHCP and DNS tools that you can use to configure those roles. Under Manage, Manage is where you would add roles and features, remove roles and features. You can actually add servers to this. So when you are in Server Manager, the thought process is that you would have multiple servers, and from any one of those multiple servers you could configure and manage and maintain all of your servers in your environment. So it's that kind of single pane of glass concept. So even when you go to add a role or feature, it's going to ask you which server. It doesn't necessarily have to be this server. I could use this to actually manage my server core, since the server core doesn't have a GUI. I do have an option along the left hand side here for local server. I'm going to click on that. Now I'm managing my local server specifically. Things in here are what was kind of mentioned back in that Microsoft reading. Turning Windows Defender Firewall on, modifying the workgroup or domain, changing the computer name, changing IP addresses, remote management such as remote desktop and those sorts of things can be managed here. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to change the computer name, and I'm going to call this server DC because it's going to become my domain controller. I'll leave it as a work group for now. And then I'm also going to download the updates. After I get all updates downloaded on both my machines, what I'm going to do is change the IP addresses. And again, once we do that, we are going to lose internet access. If we would ever need internet access back, we have a couple different options. We can either add an additional network card, virtual network card, or you can just flip your IP address back to obtain automatically or DHCP. So what I'm doing right now is just going to update, going to install all of the updates and let that do its thing. This is still installing updates on core. In the lab document, I'll give you your IP addressing scheme. But again, you'll want to do this after you have all of your updates. But you would come into here, and there's a variety of ways to do it. You can do it through here. You can do it by using the icon lower right. You can go into settings. You can go into control panel. I like to just typically click there. Go into my IP version 4 properties, and then give it whatever address scheme that I'm going to have you give it. So again, this small section here is just about post-installation configuration tasks. Whenever you get done installing a server, whether it's a physical server or a virtual server or maybe even a server up in Azure, you want to do post-installation configurations, and that's doing things again like renaming the machine, putting it on the network, joining the domain, adding roles, installing updates, maybe connecting it to Azure, whatever things you need to do to actually get it functioning on the network. It's post-installation configuration. So I hope after watching this video you have a little bit of an understanding of what some of those tasks are. There's some resources for those tasks under the material, and then hopefully you have some sort of background to be able to do the lab for that section. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.